Today we're going to be looking at a poem from the Love and Relationships cluster. We're going to be looking at Singh Song by Daljit Nagra. Now, this poem is written in the form of a dramatic monologue, told from the perspective of a young British Indian man. He works in his dad's corner shop, and it seems like he comes from quite a strict and traditional family. He recently got married and he is head over heels in love with his new wife. So the speaker, Singh, neglects his duties in the shop and he goes to make love to his wife when no one is noticing. And that really annoys the customers because they always say, "This is the worst Indian shop in the whole neighborhood." The poem basically uses humor to show how young love makes people feel all giddy and silly and makes them quite irresponsible. But beneath the humor, the poem also looks at the ways in which young immigrants or the children of immigrants sometimes may clash with the cultural expectations of their parents' generation. Let's have a read of the poem. Now, this poem, you're supposed to read it in an Indian accent, and that's the one accent I can do. So, here we go. I run just one of my daddy's shops from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and he wants me not to have a break. But when nobody in, I do the lock. 'Cause up the stairs is my newly bride. We share in chapati, we share in the chutney, after we have made love like we rowing through Putney. When I return with my pinny untied, the shoppers always point and cry, "Hey Singh, where you been? Your lemons are limes, your bananas are plantain. This dirty little floor need a little bit of mop in the worst Indian shop on the whole Indian road." Above my head, high heel tap the ground as my wife on the web is playing with the mouse when she netting 2 cat on her Sikh lover site. She booked them for the meat at the cheese of her price. My bride. She effing at my mum in all the colours of Punjabi, then stumble like a drunk, making fun at my daddy. My bride. Tiny eyes of a gun and the tummy of a teddy. My bride. She have a red crew cut and she wear a tartan sari, a donkey jacket and some pumps on the squeak of the girls that are pinching all my sweeties. When I return from the tickle of my bride, the shoppers always point and cry, "Hey Singh, where you been? The milk is out of date and the bread is always stale. The things you have on offer you have never got in stock on the worst Indian shop on the whole Indian road." Late in the midnight hour, when you shoppers are wrap up quiet, when the precinct is concrete cool, we come down whispering stairs and sit on my silver stool. From behind the chocolate bars, we stare past the half-price window signs at the beaches of the UK in the brighty moon. From the stool each night she say, "How much do you charge for that moon, baby?" From the stool each night I say, "It's half the cost of you, baby." From the stool each night she say, "How much does that come to, baby?" From the stool each night I say, "It's priceless, baby." Right, we're going to go through this poem and we're going to see if we can select at least 3 juicy quotations. And by juicy, I mean quotations that have interesting language devices and words that you can zoom into, some structure, some punctuation marks, lots of things that we can analyze. So if this poem comes up in your exam, then you are ready and equipped with things to say. Let's give it a go. Let's work our way through the poem. Let's start from the top. Let's actually start from the title of this poem. The title is a pun. A pun means like wordplay. Sing Song is like singing a song because this poem is like a celebration of his love for his new wife. But then Singh is also a traditional name, which means this poem is like an anthem for all the young Sikh boys who are caught between Western ideas of freedom and traditional values. Now, one thing you may notice is the spellings of some of the words. I run just one of my daddy's shops. He want me not to have a break. That's not how you spell of. That's not how you spell want. The poem is written in the speaker's accent. So the words are spelled phonetically. Okay? Now we need to think, why has the poet done that? Why has he written phonetically? Well, it sounds like his accent. So English is perhaps not the speaker's first language, and it shows he's deeply rooted within his culture. It's an integral part of him, and he cannot distance himself from his culture, regardless of how much he may want to. Now he says he runs one of his daddy's shops, and daddy seems quite childish. You don't expect a grown man who's married to be calling his father daddy. And it shows that even though he's an adult, he's lacking the appropriate independence of adulthood due to perhaps his controlling parents. He's infantilized. He's still treated like a child. Also though, hold that thought. If he's saying, I run one of my dad's shops, it conveys he doesn't feel connected to the shop, which is a microcosm for the burden of expectations which have just been handed down to him. The shop is his daddy's. It's not his shop, it's his dad's shop, but he still feels pressure to look after it. Then there's repetition in 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And that paints a really mundane picture of his working hours. 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It's monotonous. It's boring. He's trapped within it. There is no freedom. And if we want to reinforce that structurally, because we love to reinforce these ideas structurally, we can talk about the use of enjambment. The sentences run onto the next lines, and it shows his long working hours. There is no work-life balance. The poet goes on to say, and he want me not to have a break, but when nobody's in, I do the lock. And maybe that's a symbol. When he's doing the lock, he's trying to separate himself and get some privacy. And he says, up the stairs is my newly bride. So he recently got married and his wife is upstairs. Newly connotes his excitement at being married. And he says, we shared in the chapati. Chapati is bread, roti. And he says, we share in the chutney. Chutney is a sauce. And he says, after we have made love like we're rowing through Putney. The repetition of the inclusive pronoun we share, we. It shows the unity in their relationship, the closeness he feels with his wife. He greatly respects his wife, and that inclusive pronoun shows he views them as a partnership. He compares their making love to rowing through Putney, so it's a simile, and it connotes, you know, this idea of them rowing away. I feel like that connotes freedom, him escaping with his wife. Also though, if we want to get really clever here, Patni means wife in Punjabi. So that line could also be seen as a sexual innuendo. He's rowing through Putney, he's rowing through his wife. When I return with my pinny untied, so he's come back from seeing his wife and his pinny, his apron, is untied. He's basically saying, I've just had sex with my wife and I've come back. But he can't use the word sex. He can't say that. So he uses a euphemism, right? Because it's all taboo. And that kind of shows his adult desires are being oppressed. Also, if he's coming back and his apron is untied, his pinny is untied, it shows it was a rushed job. So he wasn't able to spend quality time with his wife. And he says, when he comes back, the shoppers always point and cry, hey, Singh, where you been? Your lemons are lime, your bananas are plantain. Dirty little floor is the worst Indian shop. He's facing criticism from the shoppers too. So no one in his life is satisfied. Poor Singh. His parents aren't happy with him. They're telling him work. His wife isn't happy with him. He's doing a rush job. His customers aren't happy with him. They're complaining and asking accusatory questions. Where you been? Like he has to answer to everyone. He has no autonomy, no control over his own life. and what he wants to do. I actually really relate to this poem on some level, because obviously, like, my parents are immigrants. They moved to the UK. They weren't born here. And when you grow up as the child of an immigrant, there is this idea of like, where do I belong? Because I was born and brought up in London. So when I go to Pakistan, I don't necessarily feel like I belong there. Because I don't know, you know, the places the way I know England. I don't know how to walk, where to go, like, not how to walk, how to dress. Like, you don't know how things work in Pakistan. And then you come to England and people ask you, where are you from? Where are you really from? So it is this idea of like displacement and trying to find a balance between your dual heritage. The shoppers uses repetition of direct address, the words you and your. We call that direct address. And the fact that that's been repeated, that reinforces that idea of not belonging in either culture. The repetition of Indian shop, Indian road, it's like subtly implying racial tension. It's how people view him as the other. Oh, that's the Indian shop. So it's that idea of not belonging and trying to find a balance. Next stanza, he says, above my head, high heel tap the ground because my wife is playing with the mouse on a Sikh lover site. Now that's kind of ambiguous. Why is she on a Sikh lover site? Some people say it's because she runs a dating website. So that's like a modern approach to dating, love, and relationships. And that completely juxtaposes her contemporary Western attitude to his old-fashioned conformity, following the rules. Or, sorry Singh, but is she searching on a Sikh lover's website for companionship? Is she on a dating website because of her own loneliness? Because her husband is always too busy fulfilling his parents' obligations. And he says high heel tap the ground. That's like a symbol for her femininity. And it's sensory imagery, tapping. It's like he can hear it. It shows his heightened awareness. The tapping is a constant reminder that she's there. His heart's not in the shop. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to be up there with his wife. It's his yearning and his desire to be with her. In the next stanza, he says, my bride, she effing at my mum in all the colours of Punjabi. I feel like that's a quote that should be analysed. Firstly, the possessive pronoun my bride. It's like he feels a sense of pride in her. She's his. But it's really weird and unusual and humorous because she's swearing at his parents. She's effing at his mum. His wife mocks and disrespects his parents, but he's idolizing it. You know, he says the metaphor of colors of Punjabi. It's like he's celebrating her rebellion. He's describing her profanities, her swear words in a positive way. And there's a clear juxtaposition, a clear contrast between the two of them, because he says effing at my mum. He can't say the word. Even when he's narrating the story, he can't say the word, and yet she's saying it to his mother. My bride is then repeated structurally. It's a refrain, we call that. And it creates this song-like rhythm, my bride, which gives this romantic tone. It emphasizes his awe and his infatuation with his wife. He can't stop thinking about her. It's repeated, my bride, my bride. And he describes her as having a red crew cut and she's wearing a tartan sari. Again, that's a really good one to analyze. We can mind map that quotation, do it as a mind map, write all the things out of it. A crew cut is a hairstyle typically associated with men. And therefore it gives his wife like this masculinity and strength that he lacks himself. And that's further cemented through the guttural alliteration crew cut. If you don't know what guttural alliteration means, you need to go back to my first video where I take you through all the language devices. It's alliteration with guttural means like a sound that comes from the back of your throat. So crew cut. And that makes her seem kind of fierce. The color imagery of red, her hair is red, it has sexual connotations. She's fiery and she's wild and uncontrollable. And she's wearing a tartan sari, which is a strange fashion choice. Tartan is a Scottish patterned cloth, so it's a symbol of Western culture, and a sari is an Indian outfit. And I guess by describing her tartan sari, it's kind of symbolic of how he admires how easily she's able to blend the two cultures, and he's not. In the next stanza, he says, when I returned from the tickle of my bride, she didn't tickle him, it's another euphemism. And he says, the shoppers always point and cry. Again, so it's that routine. This happens regularly. Now, in the next stanza, he says, late in the midnight hour. So when everyone goes home at midnight, those are the moments that him and his wife get together, alone. And he talks about staring past the half-price window signs at the beaches of the UK and the brighty moon. I think that's a really good quotation to analyse, because I think something really a bit deeper is happening here. Firstly, it's a romantic cliche, talking about beaches and moonlight, which cements an intimate moment which they are finally able to share. But then there's bilabial plosive alliteration, beaches, brighty, the alliteration of the B sound, which is that feeling of passion in between them. I feel like Nagra does a deliberate reference to the beaches in the UK because, let's be honest, the beaches in the UK are not known for their beauty. No one travels to the UK to go to the beach here. So it's almost like that plus the tacky half-price signs at the window, it highlights how limited the speaker's imagination is and what a sheltered life he has lived. Even in his dreams, even in his wildest fantasies, he can only aspire for mediocrity. But this is the only time they are able to sightsee together, something that normal couples do on their honeymoon. And the verb staring creates this impression of being captivated by something, wanting something, not being able to take your gaze away. And that's how he feels looking at the outside world. He wants to be out there with her. To him, it's bright, yet they can only do it through the glass. And that's a barrier between them and the world outside. They know it's out there, they can see it, but they can't access it. They can see it, but they can't touch it. And the poem finally ends with the wife's voice through her use of dialogue. We finally get to hear the two of them interacting. It says, from the stool each night she say, how much do you charge for that moon, baby? From the stool each night I say, half the cost of you, baby. I find it so cute when Singh is flirting. I find it the cutest thing ever. And at the end when he says, it's priceless, baby, he basically expresses how much he values her, which makes it even more sad to me personally. I know this is meant to be a happy, funny poem. It's not meant to be a sad poem, but the way I personally read it, and it's just my interpretation, I actually think this poem uses comedy as a veneer to disguise tragedy about a boy who is stuck between romantic and familial love. He's stuck between traditional and Western values, a desire to not disappoint his parents or his wife. And structurally, this poem is really long, which could symbolize how long he has been trapped in this cycle of expectations. Now, time is used as a motif, and that's a really clever structural thing to say. Time is used as a motif in this poem, so it's a recurring symbol. There's references to time all the time, like 9 o'clock, midnight hour, your lemons are limes, even that's time is passing. And that's because time is something they don't have enough of. It's another barrier in their love. Barriers in love is a theme that runs through a lot of the love and relationships poems. So time is one of them in this one. Now, it's really important that for your poetry essay, you don't just analyse language and structure, but you also bring in context wherever you can. And that means you need to explain what was going on during the time the poem was written, and therefore what was the poet's message? What was he trying to tell the reader? Okay, some interesting context points for Sing Song are: Daljit Nagra, the poet, was born to Punjabi Sikh Indian parents who moved to London in the late 1950s. They opened a shop in Sheffield, and his family experienced racially motivated attacks and burglaries. So the concept of Britishness is a central theme to his work. Through this poem, Nagra explores the message of how culture can sometimes be an obstacle in love and relationships. And there you have it, a full analysis of another anthology poem. If you found it useful, please do give it a like, and don't forget to check out all the other extremely helpful videos in this series.